living in the van, and now you're in an RV, but in fact, you've lived in a vehicle for 24 years now. Is that the case?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Oh, so what does that mean for you when you say you live in a vehicle?
I mean, to me, it means home. Like, when we speak of home, everyone thinks of something that's fixed to the ground and that has four wheels, or four walls and doesn't move. But for me, home is more like a sense of belonging and community. It's like a feeling of warmth. And when I'm inside my van, I definitely have that feeling. Like, I feel like I'm safe there. I feel secure. It's private. If people want to enter, they have to knock, just like they do any other type of house. And so for me, it's more just like a sense of belonging rather than a structure, if that makes sense.
Sure, it does. What drew you to this lifestyle in the first place?
Well, originally it was because there was no housing to live in, and it was just kind of unaffordable. I was living in Whistler, but then I met these guys, and they were living in the vans in parking lot 4, and they introduced me to it, and I started, and yeah, despite like the snow and the mice and the frozen water in the morning, like it was something that was really, it made me feel alive and adventurous, and I just came to love that feeling and living in a van and just having that mobility to be able to move and change my scene each night. And also, like, there's like not just the physical freedom, but also like the act of like landlord and renting, and it's like having your own home, but it's a little bit more secure than renting.
Right. Okay. Well, you mentioned, the snow, the mice. I don't know what other kinds of interactions you might have. What are some of the challenges though with living on four wheels?
I mean, it's definitely not like what Instagram hashtag van life perceives it to be. There's definitely challenges. I mean, it's definitely can get cold and wet. I mean, sometimes if there's no toilets around, it's a lot, you have to drive somewhere, so this can be kind of inconvenient. The RV has a toilet now, so that's actually a real plus. And we can stand up in it, so that's kind of a new thing.
That sounds like pure luxury compared to your previous situation.
Stand up in there. Yeah. I mean, but besides, like, it's a really simple type of lifestyle, and so for me, that's really great. But the downside is obviously the weather can be hard. But more specifically and more stressful than that is just the regulations, parking regulations that don't, like in Squamish, where like they outlaw sleeping in a vehicle. So for me, that's like the biggest stress, and it kind of changed a life of freedom into a life of basically surveillance and hiding, and it's been pretty terrible, actually. So that's the biggest downside, is the legal side.
Okay, well, what about people's perceptions? Any kind of backlash that you face for living in a van, especially raising your daughter in an RV?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, there's definitely a lot of stigma. I mean, I think typically there's been a lot of stigma against anyone that has not lived in a house or has kind of lived in a different type of way, like nomadic people or like, other people, like they're always othered and seen as less than. And yeah, I mean, I've had people say type of comments like, oh, your kid doesn't deserve to be at school, you don't pay tax. But it's like, they don't really know anything about me and about a lot of vehicle residents. And I mean, I own a business in Squamish. I pay tons of property tax with the rent there, but even if I didn't, it still doesn't give them any excuse to say these type of things, because it's just stigma, and they're kind of, they don't really make anything better. They just kind of further this idea that there's an other, and yeah, to me, I try to like fight back against it, but you can't really change these minds very easily, because they're, I don't know, it's interesting because sometimes people say, they're just jealous because we have a little bit more freedom than they do, but it's also like, well, they have a choice. They're paying the rent, they're living, they're paying for more storage space, and we're paying for less storage space, so there's compromises on both sides. So
what keeps you committed to this lifestyle?
I would say for sure the freedom. Like, I mean, I just love waking up in a different area every morning. I mean, before the high life was way better, but I love like opening my door and I'm outside. And if I when I close my door at night, I can look outside and see the stars. And I just feel like I'm more connected to nature and to being outside. That's probably the biggest thing. It's like a constant fresh air.
Right. Well, listen, it's been great to connect with you again, Thomasina. Thanks for sharing your vision and your reality of home. It's great to hear you.
Thank you so much.
That is Thomasina Pigeon. She lives in an RV in Squamish with her daughter and her partner. We're exploring different forms of home across the province this week on the coast. And I'm here along with Steve Chung. Steve, what are you watching on the roads now?
Well, Gloria, we're still watching a crash in Vancouver, southbound on Granville Street at West 37th Avenue in the right lane. There's also a crash in New Westminster involving a dump truck northbound on East Columbia Street at Holmes. All directions have been impacted there. In Surrey, watch out for a crash on Highway 15 southbound before Fraser Highway. Heavy delays backed up all the way to Highway 1 to the north, and crews are on scene. In Surrey, a crash eastbound on Fraser Highway near 184th Street. Heavy delays eastbound there as well. And in Surrey, there's a crash at the intersection of 104th Avenue and 156th Street, impacting eastbound and westbound traffic. Crews have arrived on scene there. Some good news, though. The earlier crash involving a motorcycle southbound on Highway 99 north of Highway 91, that has finally been cleared, but it is still quite slow going on the Oak Street Bridge heading into Richmond from Vancouver, so we just need to give those delays a little bit more time to fully clear up. I'll have one last look at traffic coming up in about 10 minutes.
Steve, thank you.
Good afternoon, Gloria McRae, Stephen Quinn from the Early Edition here to tell you about a couple of things on our program tomorrow. There's a new study into the federal government's National Flood Insurance Program, and it's found that there are gaps in affordability and availability, which is certainly something we found out in British Columbia, in the Fraser Valley, after the floods that we had because of the atmospheric rivers a couple of years ago. We're going to talk to one of the researchers behind the study, also talk about what can be done to make sure that flood insurance is more comprehensive and available as well. And federal public service unions are filing complaints against the federal government's return to office mandate. They say the mandate undermines collective agreements and disrupts work-life balance. We're going to hear from an expert about the specific concerns around remote work policy policy and the impact the decision is having on workers. So those stories and much more tomorrow on the early edition. It all comes your way beginning at 5:30 a.m. right here on CBC Radio 1.
We shall be tuning in. Okay, 5:47 right now. She has been called one of Canada's most brutally honest storytellers, and now she is telling the story of her life. In Window Shopping for God, acclaimed comedian Deborah Kimmett explores her spiritual journey and the many challenges that she has overcome along the way. Deborah, hi, good afternoon to you.
Hi, Gloria. How are you?
I'm doing well. Now, just what place did spirituality have in your life when you decided to write this book?
Well, I've been kind of on that journey for a long, long time, so yeah, I've been exploring that topic for my entire career. I've written plays about it, and I've explored some of the ideas in my one-person show, but during COVID, I've been putting some essays together and trying them out online, see if people like them. I think people are really searching for something, so I kept working on this book to see if it held together as a book.
Okay, window shopping for God. What does that represent in your view?
Well, I think, I grew up in traditional religion, Catholic, and, then I moved away from that, and I think some people knew that I just keep going, but I kept looking for answers in places like retreats and self-help section of the bookstore, and, going to the wall of Facebook, and I was always searching for something outside myself to give me the answer, and I thought, some of it was pretty funny, and some of it was tragic, so I put it together in a book, and I started to see where the central theme was, and I thought, you really just window shop, you don't, commit to one thing, because as soon as someone wants me to sign on the dotted line, I seem to move to something else.
Well, you talked about that line between funny and tragic, and there's some challenging topics here: alcoholism, sexism, terminal illness. How do you navigate that?
Those are considered the trifecta of comedy. It's like, is there booze involved? I'm a dad. No, well, I am a comedian, so through the years, the stories are not funny about those particular subjects as much as I think when we go into those high-stake events in our lives, we go in with an expectation of how we think we're going to be. We're going to be so cool, we're going to have it together, we're going to say the right things, and then we fall short. And I thought the humor always comes from that falling short. Like, you go to see comedy because we fail, and the failure, and then getting up again and trying again, and still believing the next time it's going to be better, that's where I kind of milk it for the comedy.
Okay, well, and where's an example of milking it from your book?
Every thing I went to, I had never been gone to a Buddhist temple, but I always thought I was going to walk in and kind of go to the head of the class, you know what I mean? And so I went to the Buddhist temple. You're supposed to sit on this pillow. They all look very, very thin, and so I didn't like any of them, so I picked this really beautiful pillow at the front of the room, and it turned out that's where the sensei, the priest, sits. And so I'm meditating, and all of a sudden I get a tap. Could you move to a normal pillow? And then the walk of shame while everybody's meditating. And I gotta say, the Buddhists don't chuckle a lot. And I had to walk back to my pillow. So I think that's where funny comes from, because I went from thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so spiritual and so peaceful, to just can I leave here before I die of embarrassment? And of course the sensei was just like, what are you doing? Get off my pillow.
I mean, the search for spirituality, whether you're window shopping or whether you're, 100% buying into it all, it's a very, it's a very personal process for people. What would you say that your book has to say about spirituality overall?
Well, I think I really made it personal to me, and I think the biggest piece is that I've shopped and looked in these places and found what we always hear is that the commonality of all these things are the same message. There's simplicity and connection to other people. And although sometimes, I'd hit a speed bump and not be able to, practice what the dogma of that situation was, I found amazing people in it. And it was people who also were struggling that gave me my sense of myself. And, it's called Window Shopping for God, and my daughter was telling me that really should be called Window Shopping for Deb, but I was like, well, that's a little self-centered. But I did find pieces of myself in each of these explorations, and I wanted to put in the book where people really put me back together again when I was struggling the most. Like Humpty Dumpty, they gave me a little piece and put me back together.
I like that, and you found reason to smile along the way by the sounds of things.
Oh yes, a lot of laughter.
Listen, Deb, really nice to connect with you today. Thank you, and all the best in your journey.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
So that's comedian Deborah Kimmett, author of Window Shopping for God. It's available now. We do have a copy of her book to give away. If you're interested, you know the routine. Send us a line about why you would be interested in reading this particular book. And please include your mailing address, subject line, Window Shopping for God. And again, our email address is onthecoast@cbc.ca. Window Shopping for God. Would you like to read this book? We'd love to hear from you. Okay, Burnaby's own Michael Bublé has some news. He's just been announced as a coach on season 26 of The Voice. Yeah, so this makes him the first Canadian to serve as a judge on that American show. So here is Michael Bublé's most recognizable song.